the CeraVe foaming cleanser versus the La Roche-Posay foaming cleanser. The showdown begins.
Yes, so this is for those of you who want to know which has the best lather, which is the richest, which is the creamiest, which is the dreamiest. Well, we will answer that for you. Which is the best by La Roche-Posay versus CeraVe? Here we go.
Here we go. So these two are probably the two most popular foaming cleansers that you can find available at any store, and for good reason. These are two brands that I love, and interestingly enough, they're both owned by the same company, which is L'Oreal. And not only are they both owned by L'Oreal, they both fall under the same division of L'Oreal, which is L'Oreal Dermatologic Beauty. So these are kind of, and actually, one step further, their actually offices are right across the hall from each other in Hudson Yards. So these are kind of sister brands in a way. So it's you know, the comparison is the comparison. But I want to say about L'Oreal brands is though, when they acquire a company, they tend to keep the companies very separate in terms of product dev, marketing, and even have like a healthy competition between the brands. And so that doesn't mean that the formulas at all are similar. In fact, they're not similar at all. And so they have a completely different surfactant system. They're not even close. So let's start off by saying that these both are for someone with that normal to oily skin, and they're both meant to be those foaming cleansers within their portfolio.
Right, so when you look at cleansers, you'll see everything generally ranging from like an oil-based cleanser to a creamy cleanser, then to a balanced cleanser, and then to a more foamy cleanser. And this is on that far end of the spectrum where these are really tailored towards, like he said, the person with normal to combination to oily skin, because the lather and the ingredients are all shifted towards and geared towards that person who has a little bit of extra oil, at least in the T-zone. So in determining which one of these is the best, we'll actually start with the ingredients and formula that makes up the actual product, so you know what it's going to do for your skin.
And when it comes to cleansers, you know, a lot of times we talk about the ingredient breakdown, portfolio, beneficial ingredients, and the truth is a lot of this is going to rinse off, so you really have to take this with a caveat that are these really going to make a difference? But I guess the two main things is from an ingredient perspective, they both have niacinamide in it. They both have ceramides in it. You know, CeraVe has 3 essential ceramides. La Roche-Posay has 1 type of ceramides. I don't think it honestly makes a difference. Now, what two claim ingredients is that CeraVe has the hyaluronic acid in it, and La Roche-Posay has glycerin, and it also has their prebiotic thermal water. I don't think either of these differences are going to make a big difference. I actually think the real difference comes in their surfactant system and in some of the other complementary ingredients.
Right, so when we're looking at surfactants and the cleansing ingredients, we're considering either irritation potential as well as allergen potential, because things like cocamidal propylbutane, and believe me, these names actually become very similar, that can be a rising common allergen, so we want to see, not that basically, we want to see other ingredient substitutes. So we're going to start with CeraVe. This one has cocamidal propyl hydroxysultane. You see, it sounds similar, but it's actually different. It does change oftentimes the problematic components of an ingredient. And then it also has sodium lauryl lactylate, different from sodium lauryl sulfate, again, minimizing the irritation, allergen potential, and potential damage to your skin barrier, minimizing the stripping, all that stuff. Additionally, and then we'll switch over to this one, so La Roche-Posay, otherwise known as LRP. This one has cocoa, where are you? I know you're in here. It's somewhere. Cocoa betaine. So again, similar sounding, but different. Both of them, however, both being fragrance free. Both of them are non-comedogenic, which for a cleanser, I mean, if you have a comedogenic cleanser, you're really doing something wrong. But now I will say that the LRP, in the same vein of minimizing irritant potential, allergen potential, in this case, not an allergen potential, but paraben free for LRP. And then we do have, I believe, some parabens in the CeraVe one, methylparaben being there, and then propylparaben as well. So, you know, when it comes to parabens, it's a tricky conversation because there's a lot of nuance and depth to that topic. One thing we do know is that the Contact Dermatitis Society made a point to name it the non-allergen of the year. So whatever else it may do, whatever specifics that individual different types may do, it is not a potential allergen for your skin.
Yeah, so I don't have really an issue with these. Now, the nuance gets around like which type of parabens and at what concentration, but I know a lot of consumers have concerns around parabens, and so the one with CeraVe has parabens, not something I worry about. It's a product I still recommend and use, and then La Roche-Posay does not have parabens in it. So that's just for your knowledge, and both are fragrance free. Now, La Roche-Posay makes a specific call out that this is a product that is for sensitive skin, meaning that they've done some studies on sensitive skin to show that it's non-irritating, doesn't sting, doesn't burn, doesn't strip. Now, CeraVe also doesn't make that claim. Doesn't mean that they didn't do those studies, but I think if they probably had done the studies specifically on sensitive skin, they probably would have called it out.
Yep. So both fairly comparable in cleansing, not stripping, cleansing, not allergenic, irritating. I wouldn't really say one is the winner clearly here. If I had to give a nod for that, I might say this one. But it's anecdote, so just take that with a grain of salt. Next up, after we have the ingredients, then we have perhaps the way it interacts with your skin, starting with like pH and other ways it supports your skin barrier.
Yeah, so these both have, so when it comes to pH, they both have very similar pHs. They're both skin identical pHs, right? So you don't want very high pH, you don't want a very low pH when it comes to maintaining your skin barrier. You want something very similar to your own acid mantle. So you're looking at something from 5 to 6, and both of these fall in that 5 to 6 range. So you shouldn't notice any stinging or discomfort when you apply either of these products, and so they're both good in that regard. Now, when we talk about textures of the product, this is where the differences really come, and it comes down to that really the consumer experience. And then finally, we'll follow with price after that. So what do you think about the textures between these two?
So these are both products that we have used for a long period of time, and I retried one of them again just to make sure I was right. So I feel like these both have two distinct bodies. They come out as a gel and then turn into a lather. For me, I think the CeraVe one has a thicker gel, but a lighter lather. I think LRP has fine body gel, but it turns into like an extremely rich lather. So depends on what you want aesthetically out of it. If you want a rich lather, I strongly give the nod to this one. I actually like the way it makes my skin feel afterwards. Sometimes I actually get irritation reactions from it, but that's just me. Like I'm allergic to a non-allergen somewhere in my life, so.
Could be the niacinamide again. So we're feeling as if Dr. Maxfield may be becoming sensitive to niacinamide. Both of these products have niacinamide, and so may not be the friendliest to his skin, but these are two products that I'm very familiar with and have used both a bunch. I do feel that the one from CeraVe is a little bit more drying for me as someone with combination to dry skin. And so I feel a little bit more tighter when I use this product afterwards. Now, the Roche-Posay one I feel like is a bit silkier. It leaves me a little bit more hydrated. And so when comparing those, and again, this is coming from someone with a perspective of normal to dry skin. If you have oily skin, you may prefer that more oil removing properties that the CeraVe one has. But because of the surfactant system and the way that it's formulated, I do feel like it leaves you a little bit more dry, where the Roche-Posay one leaves you a little bit more hydrated with a little bit of a silkier finish. So as far as texture and performance, I personally prefer the Roche-Posay one.
Yeah, and I do too. So that's my personal opinion and my preference as well.
Now, when it comes down to price point, this is where you're going to see some differences as well. And I honestly think that that gap is closing more and more. You know, initially when I was in training, there used to be a relatively large gap between La Roche-Posay and CeraVe. It was widely considered that La Roche-Posay was definitely the more premium option. Now, when you talk about their serums, La Roche-Posay still has a pretty big gap between, let's say, for example, their Melazole or their hyaluronic acid serums, for La Roche-Posay falling in the $40 range and CeraVe's falling in the $20 range. But when it comes to their cleansers and their moisturizers, there actually is a lot of parity in this area. So you're talking about $1.20 an ounce versus like $1.30 an ounce. So it's not a major difference now in price point. And so I really would anchor on performance and feel rather than on price with these two.
Right. Yeah. And again, cleansers in general should be affordable. Both of these fall into that category based off of the volume. So no real winner here. I think it's a negligible difference. Statistically significant, perhaps, but it shouldn't impact your daily life. So no clear winner on price. Now, which one then is our favorite? Which one is our favorite? Which one's our recommendation? What do we love more? For me, I would go with La Roche-Posay as the one I prefer. What about you?
Yeah, I would say I would go with La Roche-Posay. I think for the average customer, it's a little bit easier to shop CeraVe because the products and like what they do and how they're organized is a little bit clearer, and in terms of like where you would fall. Like they have their foaming cleanser, which is clearly for oily skin. They have their cream to foam, which is for more normal combination, and then they have their hydrating cleanser, which is for drier skin. So it makes you a little bit easier. Like, okay, I'm one of these three. I'm going to go with one or the other. Where La Roche-Posay has kind of like a range of products. It's kind of hard to know which one is going to be the cleanser for you. But I think for when it comes specifically for either oily skin or normal skin, I would prefer the La Roche-Posay foaming cleanser, just overall due to the experience, and because the price is only slightly higher, I would still go with that one.
Yeah, okay, there it is. We have our winner for the foamiest cleanser in the land, or at least the foamy cleanser that you might like. So if there's something you want us to review, if there's something you want us to compare, we'll do it head to head. We will see which is the best. But thank you for being a part of this, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Let us know what you want us to compare next, and we'll see you in the next video.